yes. I'm just watching, huh?
Okay, Mama. Thank you. Yes, no problem. Just go ahead and watch. Thank you for coming. So just know, folks, that this is more of a like sit down workshop. It's not going to be super interactive, or I should not say it's going to be interactive, but we will include some stretch and movement more towards the end. It's not necessarily
a workout.
A workout. Okay, so you don't need to, be in you can be in workout gear, but you don't have to be. We are.
I am tired today. I'll just watch.
Okay, Mama. Okay, thank you so much. That's my grandmother. She's 85 and she knows how to work Zoom like a boss. So we're really excited to have her. Yeah. So folks, we're having a couple, our speaker today is having some technical issues. So we're just gonna get everyone comfortable during our workouts at Fitness in Place. We always do it.
Maybe we should introduce that, just because we've got some people here from our kind of realm, our Fitness in Place realm. We are Fitness in Place, Faish and myself. We do at-home workouts with stuff, chairs, broomsticks, bags, and we're able to get creative and do a lot of cool stuff at home instead of having to go out to the gym. And so like half of the people here, roughly half, are people that know us through that. And the other half are people that have kind of heard about this workshop that we kind of helped put together with our host, Dilini. And so half of you are kind of just heard of that somehow. And so we've kind of got multiple different worlds colliding here. Of course, at the end, if you're interested in who we are and what we do a little bit more, hang around and let us know. But one of the things that we usually do during our workouts or prior to our workouts, obviously, maybe you're not super familiar with working out, but I'm sure all of us have heard of the term warming up. You warm up before you work out, before you exercise. There's lots of good reasons. But we do, before our warm up, a little bit of what we call a social warm up. A lot of us are living in COVID times, unfortunately, isolated, or more isolated than we would prefer. We're not interacting as much. A lot of it's through Zoom. I find myself just chatting up the checkout people because like, oh, it's another person. Hello, hello, hello. So I think a lot of us are starving for that kind of social interaction. So what our social warm-up usually is it can be as simple as which do you prefer, A or B, right? And either or, what kind of person are you? A or B, or, which would you rather type of question? What would you do? How would you kind of question? And sometimes it's simple, sometimes it's a little more in depth. So, I see that.
Dilini, our speaker has arrived. Yeah. So
okay, so do we want her to introduce herself, or do we want to?
Yeah, why don't we do a little bit of both? So we're going to do our quick social warm-up will be, do you have a question in mind?
Sure, yeah. No, normally it would, because we don't usually have this many people. So the way we're going to do it is we're going to send out the question. I'm going to ask the question. And if you would like to participate, you're going to plug in what your answer would be in the chat. So we can see them and read them and interact in the chat if you want. We'd love to interact with each of you individually, but like there's a lot of you, which is a good thing. So the question, let me see, which one should I pick?
A good one.
A good one? Oh,
okay, real quick.
A good one that we've done before. So some of our Fitness in Place people will have heard this before, but I like to think positive. I like to think toward the non-COVID future. So the question today will be, you get an all expenses paid vacation post-COVID, COVID's over, everyone's vaccinated. You get an all expenses paid trip anywhere, a vacation. Are you warm in the sun? Are you snowy and skiing and sledding? Or camping?
Yeah, and you don't necessarily have to travel. You can also just, are you going to go walk in the park? Are you going to, it doesn't have to be like a high expense trip, right? So if you don't,
but it's all expenses paid.
But everyone, yeah, that's true. That's true. So why don't we use the chat real quick? If we can all type one thing that we would do, we'll give everyone like a couple minutes to do that, and then we'll introduce our speaker. Thank you all. I'm going to read off some of the answers. Northampton, Massachusetts in the fall, Disney World, Spain, Australia. I love it. Hawaii, dream trip, Italy and Greece, New Zealand. Yes, love it. New Zealand, number 2. Nice. Pyramids, Egypt, trip around the world, beach, mountains, desert, tundra,
everywhere.
India, everywhere. Neil and Arun. Oh, that's coming up so quick. McDonald's, Vegas, for Faroe Islands, Mordor. Is that is that a real place? Okay. I think I know the answer. Tropicals, anywhere with my sister. I love it. I love it. I'm just going back. Japan. Clubbing. I want to go clubbing. I love it. Neil and Arun say, stay home, check out the trails in GTA.
Ooh,
love it. Love
nice.
it. Vienna, coffee houses, Kaya, Japan, Cary, Bhutan. I think I'm saying that right. Holland, Patagonia, Thailand, cruising. Love it. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. A lot of good energy there. Again, we're trying to create that intimacy with you all before we begin. Now I'm going to introduce Dilini. Dilini is the owner, and I'm going to spotlight myself. I'll spotlight Dilini here in a sec as well. Dilini is the owner of Thrive Mama. She's an occupational therapist who specializes with women, specializes with pelvic floor health. There is a lot of wealth of information that she has within her. And I highly recommend, if you did not get what you needed from today, please reach out to her. She is a very loving, caring, kind person and super patient and safe. I personally look forward to working with her more in the future after everything we've done so far for today. I am, oh, there's Caribbeans in there too. Cool. Dilini, I'm going to spotlight you now. We'll do that next. I am going to mute everyone as well. So just a heads up, and Dilini, you will have to unmute yourself. So let me get you spotlighted.
Okay, unmuted. Can everybody hear me? I had some internet issues this morning, so I'm really happy that I'm here and that I've been forced to put pants on instead of just wearing pajamas around all day. So this is a good start to the day. And Vaish, thanks so much for that awesome introduction. There's nothing more than that I can say other than this love goes right back to Vaish and Pat, because I think the reason why we decided to work together is because we're on the same wavelength in terms of how to approach health, how to approach our wellness, and it is a safe space, it's a safe community, and I love that about you guys. Just a quick introduction for people who don't know me as well. As Vaish said, I am an occupational therapist, and I'm the owner of Thrive Mama. I'm also a yoga instructor, and I put all these three together to work on pain and pelvic health with women in all walks of life, particularly though at points of transition. So that's sort of where my focus is, and this is why I'm so excited to talk about low back pain today and how to move with that, because it is something that affects so many of us. Vaish, is there something that you want me to speak to specifically, or do you want me to get started on, on the stuff that I want to talk about? What do you want to do?
Maybe what an occupational therapist
Yeah, maybe
is.
what an occupational therapist is. That's a pretty good one.
What is that? What do you? Yeah.
Do you know, I saw, that's so true. That is a really good question, because most people don't understand what that is unless they have interacted with an OT in the hospital, and then it's, are you helping me go to the bathroom? Or if it's somebody who's working in a more admin type setting, then it's, are you part of human resources? Are you the occ health person? And it's neither one of those for me. Occupational therapy really refers to looking at all the different factors in life. So whether it's physical or it's social or spiritual or emotional, and putting that all together to holistically look at you and to figure out how to get you where you want to be. I know that's kind of vague. When it comes to pain and pelvic health, and when it comes to low back pain, which we're going to be talking about more here, I'll make things a little bit more clear based on the examples that I give and the type of suggestions that I share with you in terms of what you want to look for in your own bodies. The other piece that I wanted to mention is I was looking for an image to kind of share about what an OT does, and the best sort of image that I found was this, those like crystal balls that people kind of look at and have like magic crystals and salts and stuff like that. People think holistic and they think all this airy-fairy stuff. And I say airy-fairy because I've actually had people say that to me before. You're an occupational therapist? That sounds very airy-fairy. I don't really know what you're talking about. But it is a combination of understanding where you are physically, grounding in that, but recognizing that there is so much more to you than just one part of your body or one diagnosis or one injury. There are so many elements that come together. Was that like a long-winded but maybe sort of clarifying answer?
That sounds good to me. If you have any, please use the chat as much as you want. We'll keep track of it. So if you have any other questions, feel free to add that in whenever, and we'll make sure to note it for the end. Yeah, I think that was great. Let me remove the spotlight and get back to a couple things that I need to say. So just a heads up, I will be spotlighting, but in case your view does not show the presentation well, make sure you go to the top right-hand corner of your screen. It says view, and from view, you can click speaker view or gallery view. And so when I allow Dilini to share her screen, she will be able to show that presentation, and just make sure you have a good visual of her and the presentation. The other thing I want to say is, again, invitation to ask questions anytime, no wrong answer. Private message us if you're not comfortable with having your name out there because you're new to this area or new to this group, totally fine.
Does everyone know
there's
how to do
a
it?
private option. So on the bottom of your screen, there's a chat button, usually probably on the bottom,
Bottom right.
Bottom right or bottom middle. And then you can actually click specifically my camera, which should say Vaish and Pat. And then there you can private message us or message everyone in the group. Totally fine to do either. Yeah, this is the next question I actually have. So I do need all of you to engage again in the chat. Do you have back pain? I would like to know yes, no. And second question, so you can put it together, is yes or no on back pain? And if so, how long? Has it been a couple days? Has it been a couple months? So add a number and like a detail of month, year, if you do. Thank you. Someone's already responded. What is a good stretch for that? We will be addressing that. Thank you, Mrs. G. We'll definitely be addressing that today. I do not, but I have loved ones who do. Okay, varying areas for 20 years. Yes, on and off for years. I've had back pain since I was 7. Yeah, this is real. Yes, plus or minus 15 years. Varying years, a lot of yeses. Lasted several months. On and off for 3 years. This is real, right? It doesn't matter what age you are. People are experiencing pain somewhere, right? So how do you end up working through it, right? And we only have less than an hour and a half to go to help to a degree. But I do want Dilini to preface that this isn't going to solve all your problems in one day. It is an ongoing process, and we do need to walk towards figuring it out versus stepping away or ignoring it. Someone else just said back pain through epidural. So real, women that are giving birth, epidural, that's, that if for folks that don't know what an epidural is when they have a needle being shot in your spine to numb the body for labor. Anyways, I do want to say again, this is not a magic solution. We are here to support you. We are here to empower you. Please keep that in mind as we navigate this. And then like I said, at the end, we will go through some stretches together. I'll take care of that. And now I'm going to actually hand it over to Dilini for the presentation. I will say that someone else said sciatica, rheumatoid arthritis, disease in the spine. Thank you for saying that. Yes, and on and off, family history. It's real. Bad car accident, I don't know, but it spurs from time to time. Real stuff, real stuff. I'm going to give it to Dilini now. Thank you all so much for sharing that. We are here together. Dilini, if you don't mind unmuting, and when you're ready, we have another person saying sciatica. Perfect. Thank you so much. Since 2011. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, like you said, Vaish, the pain is real, right? It affects so many of us. I'm just going to share my screen and then I can get started kind of talking to you guys a little bit more about this. So, I mean, I have what you're seeing right now. The presentation that I have going on is, I mean, it started off this big. And I don't know if you can see me. When I share the screen, I know that there's that dividing line between the picture and the actual screen share. It would be helpful for this presentation, I think, if you could move that divider over so that you can also see me, because there will be parts of it where I'll be demonstrating and I'd be it'd be helpful for you, helpful for me, if you could follow along as well. So just going to give you a second to do that. And then that way you can also see that when I said pain affects all of us, it affects us this much. And so my presentation started out this big with my hands kind of coming off screen here. And I had to shorten it and shorten it and shorten it to get to a bite-sized piece that we can talk about here. But I hope that this is enough to kind of kickstart this conversation. I will be powering through some points because I want to make sure that we leave some time at the end for conversation and for questions, because I'm sure that with your own experiences of pain, there might be things that come up as well. So my work in pain started really from the very beginning. As soon as I graduated, I started working in chronic pain, started working in mood management. I have 2 kids of my own, so I've had my own experience of pain and recovery. It was complicated, and so I put all of that together, and I'm now working with women to kind of get through that experience, or to help them manage that experience and decrease pain. What I do know, as Vaish pointed out, is that there's really no such thing as long-term quote unquote relief. And I use that word very specifically because to me, relief means that there's a peak of pain and then a valley of relief and then a peak of pain again. And wouldn't it be great if we could take that little valley of relief and extend it out so that that becomes the baseline? So to me, that means more than sort of focusing on relief when it comes to back pain, that we're looking more at reframing our back pain. And when I think about that, I think about the bigger picture and what back pain really involves. And it's not just, as I pointed out before, it's not just one injury or one part of your body, but really how your brain and your body work together in order to give you that experience that you're having right now. Now, when I hear from people, I often hear, well, I've tried medications. I've tried massage therapy, and geez, that works really well. I've also had other adjustments done, and those are great. I'm not saying no to any of that. Those do provide relief, but it is short term. It's not something that many people want to hold on to for an extended period of time. There are also surgical options, which are helpful if that is what is appropriate for you, but pain isn't necessarily addressed by that, because surgeons will focus on function, they'll focus on what the mechanics of that joint are, and that's what they'll address, but they'll never make a promise that if I work on this part of your body, that your pain's gonna go away. And that's because they know that pain is more than just that one body part and how it's moving. Again, it's about how things come together. So in my work, I talk about training, retraining, and restoring. And so it's the idea that when we're looking at pain, we have to understand what is happening in our body. We have to recognize that when there's an unknown, we typically react from fear. That's a normal human response. If you don't know what's happening, especially when it comes with these really uncomfortable, painful sensations, we react often in a way that pulls us away from that. If, however, we understand that what's happening in the body is just part of the nervous system, that pain is normal, that it is typically helpful, and that what it's trying to do is actually tell us that there's something that we need to address that might be dangerous, then we can understand if and when we need to make a change in that. So our nervous system, just quickly, is based on this idea that we've got sensory input, right? We've got nerves, this crazy network, trillions of nerves that run through our body. Imagine like a network of vermicelli noodles running through your body, picking up senses from around you. It sends that information to your brain, which integrates. It takes all that information and gives it meaning. It decides what is actually going on, and then it tells you what to do about it. Our pain system works with that, right? So we've got nociceptors, which pick up mechanical sensors and temperature and chemicals, and all of that comes together to tell our brain, wait a minute, there's too much pressure in this area. Wait a minute, this is too hot, too cold, you need to move away. Then the brain says, this is dangerous. It sends a pain signal, and you move away from that. That's a very simplified version of how that works. But it also shows us how powerful the brain is, because the brain is what's dictating what that means to us. Do you know, though, that it is possible for the brain to mix up hurt and harm? So, for example, if you've had brain freeze, where you've had a slushie and it goes to your brain, goes quote, to your brain, and it feels really cold and it is painful, right? But there isn't actually harm there. So there's pain, hurt, but there's no harm, there's no danger. Conversely, there are also stories where people have swam in the ocean, they've had an experience with or an encounter with a shark, they swim to shore, make it there safely, and then realize they're missing a leg or missing a foot. And that's when the pain kicks in. And it sounds pretty crazy, but it's because the brain is saying, you know what, in this moment, what is more important to you and your safety, rather than paying attention to your foot and maybe stopping swimming in the water, is to get you to safety. And then we can look at the secondary thing, which is your foot that's missing. Our brains are powerful. We really have so much opportunity to create change within our pain response by understanding how our brain is interacting with our body to create the experience that we're having. And so I have talked about this already, and we're going to retrain the body now. And I just love this graphic, this idea that we can strengthen this brain, because often when people talk about training, retraining, it's about the context of the body, but really I'm talking about connecting the two. Because right now we have movement patterns that might not be as helpful for us. But if we understand what's happening in our body and our brain can say, you know what, this isn't dangerous, we can slowly engage in movement that will calm the nervous system down even more, strengthen those connections. And that creates lasting change, not relief, but lasting change. And finally, restore. And this to me is so important because when people have been experiencing pain for an extended time, I hear over and over and over again, I don't feel like myself anymore. I don't feel like I'm living to the fullest. I don't feel like I'm connected to, to ones that I love. I don't feel I'm doing things with joy. I just get through the day sometimes. And so it's important to look at this piece too. This is what makes us feel whole. I hope through this presentation and through this conversation that you understand the pain pathway. That's a training. Learning about alignment, breath, and intentional movement. We're retraining the body, and then identifying the next step to manage pain. I hope that helps you restore your sense of who you are. There are types of pain for it that we're going to talk about today. And I'm just going to go over them really quickly, but I want to talk about it because if you understand the type of pain you have, then it gives you some more information about how you can manage it. So the first is nociceptive pain, and this is the result of tissue injury. It's mechanical, or maybe it's postpartum, post-surgical pain. And oftentimes in this type of situation, if you're experiencing an injury, as that injury heals within the quote unquote normal time frame, then as that happens, then the pain experience will also settle alongside. So as that wound heals, pain settles. Second, we have inflammatory. So it's more of an autoimmune response, an inappropriate response to your body by your body. There's neuropathic pain. So pain caused by nerve irritation. And then there's functional pain, which is pain that doesn't really seem to have a cause. You look at yourself and you think, you know what? I don't see any damage to my body. Tests come back and they say everything is fine. And yet I'm still feeling these sensations of pain in my body. This doesn't seem to make sense to me. I'm not in any danger. What's going on? And in this case, we say it's because there's a sensitization of your nervous system. That connection that your brain is making with that sensation of pain, that sensation, or rather, the interpretation that your brain has that you are in danger is continuing. And it takes less and less to trigger that response of pain because your brain believes essentially that there's a lion chasing you at all times and it's constantly in the state of stress. When I talk about pain often, it also starts with a conversation around physically what's happening because that's sort of how we think about it most often, right? So when people feel pain, what they want to do is rest. Stay away from that, stop the thing that's causing them pain. And that makes sense when an injury is healing because you do want to give it time to rest. You want to give it time to heal. But if that pattern remains for a long time, then we start avoiding activities in general that lead to that pain. When that happens, we start to weaken. The muscles that we don't use, they weaken. It's just the same as the muscles you use, strengthen, right? So the opposite is happening here. As that happens, it takes less, anytime you want to move, it comes with more pain.
Okay, y'all, it looks like she froze, so just give her a second to come back. If you need to get some water, this is a good time, or go to the bathroom. Let's see.
And she's still in there.
Yeah, she's here, but she's just frozen. Let me message her as well. These are the technicalities of the virtual world.
Yeah, just sit tight, everyone.
Okay, so she got kicked out. It looks like she'll be back. This is a good time to stop and kind of check in anyways. Let me spotlight myself so we can wait. But how did that all sit with you? Darshika just said, such a great conversation. It's a metaphor to everything in life. That is so true. So true. If there's anyone that would like to speak, we're also happy to have you speak. Just raise your hand or unmute yourself, and I'll give you the space to talk, because I know not everyone can type. Sherry said, I was thinking the same thing with my trauma. It's across worlds, across people, right? We all think our stuff is so specific to us, but so many of us go through the same exact thing in different ways. Hamida just said, same here. Love it. Liz, such a universal experience. It really, really is.
I'll have to ask, but I think that back pain, and maybe Dilini would know this better than me, but I believe back pain is like the #1 cause of pain. Knee pain is a very common one. Shoulder pain is a very common one, but back pain is, I think, the #1. And that's a good question that I'll ask Dilini when she gets back. Is that it affects all of us?
Yeah.
Right? We've all got a lower back, right? We've all got a lot of virtually the same body.
Yeah. Vibhush, I know you're unmuted. Why don't do you have something to say? I'm gonna spotlight you if that's the case.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
No, I really like what she's saying, because I recently went through this last month with my back. I literally had hurt my back running and doing other activity that I couldn't stand up straight. I was like this. I was at an angle. And I can very much say, like, I very much followed that track she was saying, where at first I knew I had to avoid my activity, but the moment I could start maybe doing a little bit, I just kind of felt like, no, I don't want to do this again. I don't want to hurt myself. And it just kind of put me in a way that I didn't feel like I could communicate even like where my mind was at anymore. So I very much had to kind of work my way out of it, regaining that step of saying I can keep kind of pushing and pushing, but I very much get the aspect of losing a sense of communication because we're afraid of hurting ourselves again.
Thanks, Vibhush. Thanks so much for sharing that.
It's a bit of a protective mechanism, right? The kind of example of the child when they're young, they put their hand on the stove and it's hot, it burns. Well, it's because it's doing damage, right? If you were to just leave your hand there. And so there is a protective mechanism there, right? There is sometimes pain that we should not avoid in the sense of that we never deal with it, but that we deal with it. And some people get caught in the, oh, well, there's pain, I don't want to deal with it at all. And then that kind of defeats the purpose of the pain mechanism to, hey, something's wrong here, let's fix it. Let's reevaluate what's happening here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I very much agree.
Thanks, Vibhush. Yeah, let me remove you. So in terms of the last few comments before we gave it back to Dilini, is that I did see a couple of people say it's pretty much across backgrounds, levels of activities, and other demographics. Back pain is super common in all populations. This is from Liz. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Lori says, I can identify with taking it easy because of pain, but then dealing with more pain because I've rested so much. It seems as if there's no happy medium for me. I need to find a balance with it. And we all do. It's balance is a key for everything. And it's some definitely harder than other areas. A lot of folks are agreeing with Lori. And everyone in general, nice to know I'm not alone. I love that we can come together. I do think Dilini is back. Let me just see if she is here. Okay, I'm gonna mute her. I'm gonna mute myself, and I'm gonna spotlight her again.
All right, I'm here. Let's hope I stay here this time. I feel like I've been bouncing in and out. Okay, let me start sharing my screen again. I
Oh. Dilini, sorry, I may have accidentally muted you. Go ahead and unmute and repeat what you said.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good.
Okay, perfect. So I was just saying that I caught the tail end of what people were saying in the conversation, and it's a very common pathway that people follow, right? So I'm just going to get myself back to that point in my slides, and that way we can kind of catch up. So to recap, we've talked about the pain pathway so far only along the physical side of it, right? But we can already see that we're not robots. And from the comments that I did hear, certainly you guys have firsthand experience of how our moods and our thoughts and our responses to this can have a knock-on effect. And so it starts with all these thoughts and emotions that come up. So feelings of anger and anxiety, being scared, feeling super stressed about that point often come with thoughts like, what's going on? Is this going to last forever? Is this ever going to go away? How is it that we can put a man on the moon and people can't take this pain away? What is this new sound that I'm hearing? Was it here yesterday? We become super sensitive to those types of thoughts. And there's nothing wrong with them. Those are thoughts that come up. They are natural thoughts that come up. If those, however, become the largest voice or the loudest voices that we're listening to, it tends to affect our mood overall. And we've got changes to sleep and diet, and then changes to how we interact with people that come about at the same time. So we might pull away from other people because, geez, it's just easier for me to stay at home than to have to explain to people that I'm just not going to be wanting to walk that extra distance with them, or that it takes too much energy for me to sustain a conversation. Or what are people going to think of me if I go to watch that movie, but it's too difficult for me to sit in the theater in that seat for too long? So all of these thoughts that we have affect how we behave. It affects how we see ourselves. It affects how we interact with the world around us. And that has this effect of increasing our perception of pain. So if we see the world as, or if you take a look at your life and you think of it as sort of a wide angle photograph where you see all these different people around you and the things that you do and the roles that you have, sometimes the longer you experience pain and the stronger the influence of these thoughts and these moods on your system, the stress on your system, it's almost like we activate a zoom lens, right? And we zoom in closer and closer and closer until what we're left with, what we see, is just how our pain is limiting us, limiting our lives. And so we tend to lose our sense of who we are. And that's where that restore piece really comes in. And we start to feel like we don't have control over what's going on. It just seems like, okay, just got to get through this day, got to get to the next day. There are many options that you have to reduce your pain and regain control. And I want to just say that again, in case you need to hear it. You can reduce your pain. You can regain control. It doesn't matter how long you've had it for. There are some factors, I'm sure, that you'll be able to change. It does require, though, that you do some work. So we talked before about short-term relief. We talked about sustainable work or sustainable improvement. The sustainable piece starts with you, and it starts with figuring out where we can make change in that stress cycle. So I did send out a handout for anyone who's following along. And on the second page is a breakdown of this stress cycle that I just shared. And it's got a few pointers. And I ask you to think about, what sort of activities you've started avoiding, what thoughts you're having right now, what impact it's had on you and your relationships. Does it affect your sleep? Does it affect your diet? There are many different points at which you can start making changes to your experience of pain. It usually isn't just one thing, because that would just be too easy, right? It never is just one thing. There's a bunch of things, but it helps to start with the one that you think is going to have the most impact on your life. So now back to this train, retrain, and restore part. We talked about the training. That was in a nutshell some of the information about pain that we have. And all that was intended to do was to tell you that you're completely normal in your experience of pain, because sometimes when you're going through it, it feels like you're the only one that's reacting in this way. So-and-so had a back injury too, and they're fine. How is it that I had a back injury and I'm still struggling? excuse me, I'm still struggling with it. What is going on? What makes me different? Nothing. We're all the same and we're all different. We just have different experiences of it because of everything else that make us who we are. Now, taking this information or just learning this information isn't necessarily going to make any change. We have to take it and put it into practice with our body. So I have a few tips that I would share with you. And, we touched upon it at the beginning. It does start, I think, with alignment and breath. And it starts with our core muscles. So pop quiz to you guys. Do you know what your core muscles are? And Vaish, maybe you can monitor the chat. So take to the chat and just let me know what you think the core muscles are. Okay, so I'm seeing abs.
Sorry, I was muted. Obliques, abs, abdominal muscles, a lot of abs answers. And there's, again, no wrong answer, or I guess there is. but biceps and would not be the case. Sides of the bottom rib connected to your hips. What's that called? Jen says. Dilly, why don't we unshare, or could you mind stopping your screen share just so we can all get back?
Yeah, good idea.
All musculature from about mid-thigh through neck, paraspinals. I don't know if I'm saying that right. A lot more than we commonly think. Thank you, Liz, for saying that. Denoja said gluteus. Jackie says and back, right? The front of your body, the back of your body, the whole circumference, really important. Yeah, go ahead, Dilini. What are you? I think that should be good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we've got a lot of, let's see if I can get back here. Oop, there we go. Okay. Can you guys see it now or no?
It's not showing. It says it started your screen sharing. Sorry about that.
No, I don't know what's going on there. It says I'm sharing on my end.
Huh.
Okay, let's try this now. Share screen and start here.
You're good. Yeah.
There we go. I just restarted it. There we go. Okay. Sorry about all this like techie stuff that's getting in the way today. So yeah, so we've
Dilini, don't worry at all. Just a heads up. It was really good to have that break. And so you're doing great. Keep on going. Everyone's loving it. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you. No, I just want to make sure that that you're able to follow what I'm saying. But I love the answers that came up. And yes, you know what? The ab is the first thing we think of when we think about our core. Why? Because we have a society that's fixated on how flat your stomach is. It makes very little impact to your health, but it seems to be what mass media sort of tends to market toward. So we think about our abs. I'm going to step back a little bit so you can see me. So we talk about our abs as being part of our core system, but this is just one of 4, if you can believe it, components to our core system. So we've got our abs, we've got our back muscles. Somebody threw out, I think, paraspinal. So we're talking about the multifidus. It is a series of really small muscles that run along your spine at the back. They're the deep back muscles, just as the transversus abdominis is your deep ab muscles. Everything else in your ab and your back system is linked to it. But when I'm talking about strengthening your core, it's important to make sure that we go as deep as possible, not just superficially. There are people who have 6-packs and abs and their core is so weak because they've only focused on this one area. There are 2 more muscle groups that we don't often think about. And that is, I'm going to switch to the next slide so you can see it as I do this. We've got our diaphragm, which is at the top. Again, I'll step back so you can see me. It is, and you guys can follow along. So you can stand up or you can stay seated, but maybe put your hands at the bottom of your rib cage and allow your fingers to kind of tuck under along the bottom edge of your rib cage here. That is where your diaphragm connects. So that's the edge of your diaphragm, and that is the top of your core system. And at the bottom, we have our pelvic floor. We don't talk about this. This is even more sort of overlooked than the diaphragm when we talk about our core system, partly because we don't even think about anything other than other than abs when we talk about the core, but also because of its connection to our reproductive system. anytime we talk about vaginas and penises, people tend to get a little antsy. So I'm sorry if you felt uncomfortable by my just saying those words, but that wasn't my intention. It's just to say we need to consider all parts to make sure that our core is working well. Insofar as it relates to your back, it's important to see if maybe your back is just not playing as well with the other components of your core system. Sometimes if the exercises that we're doing target just our back, just our low back, and doesn't allow for our back muscles to work in synergy with everything else, or we don't address the other parts of it, we can continue to experience back pain because of that imbalance. So we have these 4 components, as I talked about, and when they are in proper alignment, what I mean by that is that the pressure in your body is being distributed equally or being distributed well. It's almost like, think about 4 people in a family, or I mean, technically our pelvic floor has like 17 muscles in it. They're very small, but for the purpose of this workshop, we're going to talk about it as one big group. So think about it as 4 components of a family, 4 people in a family. If everybody's carrying their weight and doing their chores and doing what they need to do, everything is great and everyone feels good about it. They don't feel overstretched. But if one person or 2 people, you know those people in your family, if those people are pulling their weight and it falls on you to carry that responsibility, then it's going to take more effort from you. And at some point, it might lead to burnout. It might lead to things giving way. And that can cause stress on the entire system. It causes an imbalance. It is not something falling apart in your body, but rather things aren't playing well with each other. Things aren't pulling their own weight sometimes. So we need to look at alignment. And just because I'm talking about this sort of alignment, we're going to talk a little bit more about, actually, you know what, forget that. How about everybody just stand up now? If you're willing to do this, and we'll look at your core muscles. If you're willing to do this now, please take a stand and join me. I'll just give everybody a second to do that. Okay. And so as you do this, find yourself about, I don't know, hip distance apart, plant your feet into the floor, and really ground yourself. Find that base of support for yourself. Imagine and grow your spine. So imagine there's like a thread pulling your head up toward the ceiling. You feel that length in your spine. The vertebrae of your neck are separating, like you've got an imaginary turtleneck on and you're pulling your head through. So you feel that length. Now tuck your chin in toward your spine. So draw your chin toward your spine. And now take your hands and place them at the bottom of your rib cage, fingertips pointing in toward each other. So let your fingertips meet at the center. And notice what your hands are doing. Is the bottom edge of your hand, are they pointing down at the floor? Or are they pointing away from you? Are they pointing toward you? Because that gives you an indication of whether your rib cage is being tilted up, if the bottom edge is being pointed away from you, if your rib cage is tilting in, if the bottom edge of your hands kind of tucks into your body, or if your rib cage is sort of in a more neutral, straighter position, if the bottom edge of your hand is pointing down toward the floor. I hope everyone can see me, because then you can follow along with what I'm doing as well. So if you can't see me, that would be helpful.
Dilini, why don't we again stop share if that's okay? I think that may help folks focus in on you.
Spotlight, yeah.
I love these cues, and absolutely that makes sense. So, okay, can everybody see me now?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so we're at this point now where we're planted into the floor. We're standing tall. We have our hands at the bottom of our rib cage, fingers pointing toward each other. So I'm going to move my hands closer to the screen so you can see. It's like this, right? If your rib cage is aligned neutrally, you want the bottom edge of your hands to be directed toward the floor. If, however, you find that the bottom edge is angled away from you, then what that means is that your rib cage is now open. If you find that the bottom edge of your hands is angled toward you, it means you've got a crunch happening here. And these are very common positions. So think about it. If you spend most of your day sitting at a computer, we tend to do this, right? What's happening to my rib cage? It's tucking under here. So you might find that the way that you stand is now being affected or impacted by what you're doing during the day. So just something to keep in mind. The next part is to put your hands lower down on your body. So I'm going to give you some markers for the pelvic floor. At the very front, we have our pubic bone. So I have my hand on the bone at the very front of my pubis, and at the back is your tailbone. That is the front and the back of your pelvic floor. When you're sitting, you also sit on the outer edges of your pelvic floor. So you can do a mini squat to do this. Or if that's difficult for you, you can put a hand on a table and just lift one leg up to feel where that bone is. And I'll step back so you can see me to feel where that bone is. These are the sits bones we talk about in yoga. Just imagine when you're sitting on a seat where that point of contact is for you. So our pelvic floor is that diamond-shaped muscle that runs from the front to back, your pubic bone to your tailbone, and side to side from one sits bone to the other. Okay? And when we're standing, we want that pelvic floor to be parallel to the floor. Oftentimes, we want to stick our butt back or we tuck under, and it comes naturally. So again, this person who normally sits and works at the computer, if they were standing, might be tucking their butt under because that is just the position they've been holding themselves in for so long. Sometimes if you're used to carrying a weight, we might end up arching our back and then we stand like this. Or again, because we're a society that's obsessed with flat stomachs and big butts, you might end up sucking in your gut and sticking your butt out because you feel that's going to give you the shape that people are looking for. It's not healthy to do that because we need to look at alignment. So for our pelvic floor, put one hand on your pubic bone, so the bone at the front, and now one hand on your hip bone. So that's the bone on the right-hand side or the left-hand side of your body where your leg meets your hip. And you want those two to be in line with the other. So I can see people kind of feeling around. If you're having difficulty finding where your hip bone is, find where your belly button is. Move your hands over to the side and then down a bit to the top of where your leg is. And then you can bend a knee or the other and feel what's moving because that's the point of contact. That's your hip bone, okay? If you notice that there's a belly in the way, there's fat or there's skin in the way, just use one hand to lift and then use your other hand to feel for that. Okay, so we've got our markers and we're gonna reset. So I realize I'm leading everyone kind of all over the place. So plant yourself, find yourself tall, use your hands on your rib cage, notice what you're doing and see if you can angle just your rib cage without moving the rest of your body down so that, or up, so that the bottom edge of your hand is facing the floor. And then with your pelvis, one hand on your pubic bone, one hand on your hip, and tuck under or stick your butt out depending on how you're holding yourself so that it's at the same plane, so that those are sort of level with each other. This might feel really weird for you. It might be that, oh, I thought that the way I was standing was okay, that the way that I was moving was okay, but as it turns out, I actually need to stick my butt out a little bit more. Maybe I've been carrying a lot of tension and that's why this is happening. I don't know the whys of your situation. This is something that I encourage you to think about, the choices in terms of the movements that you have and the impact it's having on your body and your alignment. But I hope that by understanding what alignment could be in your body, that it gives you something that you could, that you keep in mind as you're moving through your exercises, as you're moving through your activities, because this type of alignment is more than likely to allow you to reduce that pressure that's in your system. So if you have a lot of pain, particularly back pain, pay attention to what your pelvis is doing here. And if you find it difficult to do this front and back rotation or rocking of your hip and your pelvis, then that might be an area that you want to work on because something is tight there. Something is locking there. And it could be that it's the back muscles are just being super protective right now and are contracting. It could also be that your pelvic floor is kind of pulling back on it and not allowing it to move as much. So think about that connection. And while I have you here, we'll just continue. And I'm going to add the breath to that. So we have alignment and our breath is so deeply connected to that, right? So normally when we breathe, we do it without thinking. We stop thinking about all of the basic sort of functions that our body does because we have so many other things to think about. But our natural breath allows our rib cage to expand out to the side, our belly to rise a little, and our pelvic floor to sink down. And after we come back from this, I will show you a diagram or a video so you can see what that looks like. But notice what your breath looks like in your body now. If you put your hands on the outer sides of your rib cage, so thumbs to the back, fingertips toward the front. When you take a breath in, notice what your shoulders are doing, what your chest is doing, and what your rib cage is doing. Are your ribs, is your rib cage moving out to the side, or is it more at your shoulders that you're feeling this? Is it more in your chest? Is your rib cage moving at all? Do you notice how your belly is lifting and falling with your breath? Or is it that that part of your body isn't moving at all? There's no right or wrong. This is just understanding what it looks like at this point, and we'll talk about how it might be helpful to address those different parts. Can you feel your pelvic floor expand? Can you feel it come back together?
Dilini, why don't we have folks in the chat? So everyone, why don't you take a second to let us know, where did you feel it? Shoulders, chest, or was it in your rib cage, or was it in your, all the way down into your pelvic floor? Go ahead and use the chat. Give Dilini a second to get some water and reset. Feel free to share. Rib cage, diaphragm, between my shoulder blades. Love it. Love it. That's okay. There's no right or wrong here. Rib cage, chest, and down into my stomach. Good, good. Again, no right or wrong. Just what your body does. This is where people are feeling their breath in. So Mrs. G is a singer, so felt like everything was expanding. So yeah, I find that singers are the best breathers that I've known so far. Denoja said shoulders. Nalini Mommy said chest and pelvic floor. There we go. So folks are definitely, Amelia and Kaylee said, I like how they did K and A, belly and pelvic floor. And then Amelia is said rib cage, and Hamida said shoulders. Thanks, y'all. Thank you. Keep chatting if you can. We'll give it back to Dilini for more.
No, amazing. Because you're absolutely right. There is no right, there's no wrong at this point. It's just understanding where you're starting from, because we need to know where we're starting from to know what we're working toward, right? To get to where we're working to. So if you notice that your shoulders are rising, but your rib cage isn't expanding, then there might be some tension here at your diaphragm. And this is very common for people who have carried babies, because diaphragms get stuck, quote unquote, stuck a little bit with all of the growth that happens at the front. It's very common for people who work in sort of a crunched position at the computer. It's very common for people who've been in accidents, because the way that our breathing occurs in our body, or the muscles that we use to breathe in our body, changes. It makes sense, because think back to that pain response that we had before. There's the physical side, there's the stress, psychological, emotional side. Our stress response is one where sometimes we kind of stifle the exhale because we start to hyperventilate. We start to hold our breath. And as a result, these changes in our body in terms of our breathing system get reinforced, right? If your breath is more shallow, your diaphragm isn't expanding fully up here. So your rib cage isn't going to be moving as much, which has knock-on effects lower down. I'm going to stop there talking about the breath, because I know there's so much other stuff that we need to get through today. I do want to get into intentional movement before Vaish and Pat take over with some of the movements. But what I want to say about the intentionality of this is that the only way to make change that is sustainable is if we can put those hands together, if we can put our brain and our body together. If we understand, I love it, everyone clap for yourselves. So if you understand everything that's happening, but you're not using that information to calm your body down, or if you push through all of the exercises that you want to do that are going to strengthen your body, but you feel stressed as you do it, or you hit a wall and you crash and burn, then it's not going to create any sustainable change. You're going to end up finding patterns where there's an increase to your pain and a decrease, and that cycle continues over and over and over again. So what would be most helpful is finding a way to understand what your experience is in that moment. So my rule of thumb for intentional movement is, if you have a pain scale of 0 to 10, where 0 is no pain and 10 is excruciating pain that you need to stop, if the intention is to calm your nervous system down, engage in movements intentionally up until you get to maybe 3 out of 10. Nothing more than that. Because more than that is going to aggravate your nervous system. It's going to increase that stress response. So I think somebody is talking. Did somebody have something to say?
Yeah, center.
So it looks like some folks are unmuted. I'm going to mute them.
Okay.
You're good.
No worries.
Keep going.
Perfect. I just wasn't sure if somebody had a question. So what I was saying is, use that as your guideline, because Vaish and Pat are amazing. I love their fitness workouts. I love how they provide options and opportunity to kind of decide where you want to take your exercise depending on how you're feeling that day, but they can't make you do it. And it's up to you to understand where you're able to make that change. So ask yourself these questions. How do I feel today? Like, how often do you actually check in with yourself and honestly say, how do I feel today? Usually it's, I got to get this done. Okay, I'm going to get this done, right? So take that moment, actually check in with yourself. Secondly, ask, do I have the energy to do this right now? Because the more tired you are, the more at risk you are of making choices that might put you at risk of injury, right? So ask yourself about your energy level. And then ask yourself, do I have enough energy to do this exercise or this activity with proper alignment? Because if you're doing something that's not helpful to your core system, if it's putting pressure on your back, doesn't matter if you can do the exercise. I say do the exercise. It doesn't matter if you're moving through that exercise. You're training your muscles in a way that's not necessarily helpful, right? So again, Vaish and Pat are great about giving you the options, but if you understand how you're holding your body, then that goes a long way. And again, shout out to Vaish and Pat, because they also have, I just see a moment that Vaish asks these questions. Absolutely. Every single time we're on the same page here with that, for sure. And they also have a feature where somebody's watching, if you want them to see how you're doing that exercise, so they can give you feedback on your alignment, because sometimes when you're learning this process, it's hard to see and feel what your body is going through. So if you're at the point where you're doing workouts, look for feedback. If you're working out by yourself, use a mirror, look to see what you're doing. Sometimes, and this is, I swear, when I was in my own process of recovery and learning this for myself, every time I saw a mirror, I would put a hand to my pubic bone, put a hand to my hip bone, and adjust myself. As I walked by, and I know I felt weird when I was doing it at the beginning, and then I thought, this is part of my journey. This is part of my recovery. And it's the process of being very aware, or more aware, of how those pieces come together. So Vaish and Pat, I'm going to let you take over with some exercises and some stretches to do with the group. But for everybody, I really hope that you do this with that attention to alignment and breath. And I'm sure at the end, we're going to have time for questions. So I would love to hear what you felt and how, if you were doing this differently as a result of what you learned this morning.
Thank you so much, Dilini. I have learned so much, and honestly have never heard of some of these concepts before. So I do want to share that it is a learning process for all of us. When you know more, you actually find out that you know less. And so it's important to allow yourself to learn and take the time to process. There's nothing wrong with not knowing everything. Okay, you're not going to know everything, and that's okay. So if you took 1 or 2 things from her discussion, that's solid, and then you apply it to your life, that's even better. But take your time learning and figuring it out. Okay, I am going to go through a stretch sequence. I do want to also convey what we do at Fitness in Place, because this is our baby. This is our not our real baby, because we do not have children, but my mom, I can see her reaction, and my brother and other folks. But what I want to say, and let me spotlight too to make sure everyone can see me, is that, and Pat, you can add to this as well. So Fitness in Place is a community. We are here to support you. And right now we're going to actually go through a stretch. So you kind of see our learning or our style, our technique. We are a very safe, non-judgmental, non-competitive environment to learn about the body, to work with the body. I also do one-on-one coaching as well if folks don't prefer that, and Pat as well does one-on-one too. Pat, do you have anything to add about Fitness in Place? We not only do our classes, but we also do our workshops, which we've raised over almost $1,000 actually for Kude Center. All profits are going towards that nonprofit in Toronto. And if you are with us in Fitness in Place, these workshops are free, completely free. And so we really want to serve folks that are technically, that potentially are, Pat, can you get that? Last thing I'll say is that we are trying to serve folks that are, that don't have access to community, that don't have access to fitness, because personal training, fitness can be seen as a luxury, and we want to be able exclusive. Yes, exclusive. So again, we're here for you, and we want to make sure that we can really connect with you here and in the future. So please feel free to email Dilini, email myself, or Pat. We're all here for you to succeed and to keep growing. So we're going to do our stretch now. I encourage all of you to actually sit in your chair with me. You don't need to stand. And so I'm going to move my camera so you can see me. I'm going to get my notebook as well, just so I'm on the same page as everyone. So with this first part, we're going to sit on the chair, and we're going to actually find some connection to our pelvic floor. Technically, we're going to look at it as a pelvic floor bowl that exists in our body. So with that being said, we actually will be rolling this bowl around, okay? So what I want you to do first is think about putting your hands on your hips, right, where the crease is, and you're going to tuck the tailbone in and then flare it out. And let me give you a side view so you can see better. Tuck it in and flare it out, right? Those are two directions. Now what we're going to do is we're going to tuck it in and roll it around and out. So it's not just, and you may look funny, it may feel weird, but that's okay. We want to get connected to the bowl. So we're rolling around side to side. I'm tucking in, rolling to the left, rolling back, rolling to the right, and then back. And I would actually encourage you to go the other way. And that's actually kind of hard for me to even do. So take a second and do a couple rolls. Think about the pubic bone rolling around. Last few reps. Take your time. Take those breaths as well. We don't want to necessarily stop the breathing, and rest. So that's just a connection tool to that area. Secondly, we're going to actually do a seated cat-cow. And with that, we're going to make sure that we coach you through this, okay? So again, we're going to be sitting at the edge of the chair. I would say further to the edge versus too far back. I wouldn't lean so much. And from here, we're going to expand the chest and open the shoulders in the front, right? So it's more of a cat position. And then we're going to roll our shoulders in. Actually, think about opening up the shoulders in the back and come into a cow position. Even the head can come down. So inhale, cat. Exhale, cow. Inhale, cat. Expand the shoulders. Exhale, cow. Broaden the shoulder blades in the back. So if you can only stay connected to the shoulders, that's an option. Then you also have the tailbone. So the tailbone is flaring out as you're coming up, as you're coming into cat, and then your tailbone's tucking in as you're coming into cow. This is a common, I'm sure you've seen it, cat, cow, cat, camel, all the different names on the floor. But this is an option when you're seated and you're just like, okay, I feel stiff. Let me get a little bit more connected with my body. The third movement that we're going to do is called a seated figure 4. You're going to actually cross your leg over. This, you can sit back if you'd like, more on your seat. You're going to take both palms and you're going to push it down into the body. So you're going to take the palms, push the knee down, and keep the spine nice and straight. I do not want to see you, having that spine curved under. Push it down and feel that stretch in your hip flexor, in the front of your hip. Okay, so we'll just stay with one side for now. If you're with me, we'll go for about 30 seconds here. Again, take those deep breaths. Take those breaths wherever you can. Don't let the shoulders rise to the ears. Keep the shoulders away. Open chest, long spine. Good. And then we'll switch sides. So we'll cross over. See how that feels. Maybe one side is stiffer, so take both hands. Again, spine straight and push that knee down. Nice and easy. You do have to be careful to not overdo it either. We want to find that good medium. Something that really feels right for you, that does not start pain up again. We do not want any increase in pain from before. Good. Last few seconds. Keep that spine again as long as possible and rest. Okay. So again, these are easy stretches to do at home. I do have one last one, but I think for now, I want to give the space to make sure we have time for questions. We do all these stretches at Fitness in Place at the end of our class. We always make sure we warm up, we activate, we work out together, we interact through the class. We would love to have all of you there. And we're so excited that everyone showed up for themselves today. All I have to say is, like, this is such an amazing, experience I've already had, and I hope that you feel very similar to that.
Looking forward to the next one.
Pat said, looking forward to the next one, as you see up my nose. Let's go ahead and leave it up for questions now. Darshika said, learned so much. Thank you all for that feedback. Let's see. So again, Dilini, how do you want to do this? Do you want to just let people unmute and ask questions, or do you want to actually go to the couple questions that already got asked beforehand, before the workshop that we got turned in?
Yeah, let me just quickly get to those questions, because I think some of those questions will be relevant to many people. So one was, how do I know if the sounds and sensations that I'm feeling is something that I need to worry about? How do I know if that is actually something I need to pay attention to? And my short answer to that question is usually things like pops and cracks and snaps and pain signals or pain sensations are normal. I know that there is, again, because our brain is sort of hyper alert right now, the reaction is, what is that pop? Was that there yesterday? Did I do something to create this snapping sound now? Oftentimes though, it is just your body naturally moving, and that there are muscles that are slowly kind of regaining their interaction with other things, slowly building strength. If it's an area of your body that you haven't been using as much, you're more likely to feel those sensations, because a contracted muscle, or one that hasn't been used for a while, is going to be a little bit more stiff. And so it's going to move across other muscles, and then you might hear those noises. All of this happens to everybody, whether or not it's been injured or not. It's just sometimes when we've been experiencing pain for a while, again, because our system is so heightened to this, we pay more attention, we zero in on that kind of stuff. It's like hearing your name from the other side of the room, even though there's a lot of conversation happening around you. We notice these types of things. Having said that, if you notice that there is swelling, if you notice that there is some sort of, sorry about that. If you notice that there is nerve symptoms, so radiating pain, some sort of numbness or tingling, that kind of stuff, definitely consult with somebody. If you notice that there's a change to your body that wasn't there before, like asymmetry, where one part of your body looks different, if there's a lump, if there's a mass somewhere, that kind of stuff, definitely talk to somebody about that. So those are flags that I would put out for you. But by and large, and another side note, if you've been experiencing pain for a very long time, and you haven't talked to anybody about it, it might be worth having a conversation just to get an objective opinion on what other people might be seeing. But I will flag that hopefully it's somebody that you trust. It's somebody that you can speak to, not just about the physical side, but the emotional side as well. I just saw a comment pop up. Vaish, you want to read that one out loud?
Sure. I think it's it's a little, yeah, I can read it. So some of those exercises,
To everyone.
it's to everyone. So it is frustrating. I think it, you know, there is a part of me that totally resonates with you, Lori, on not feeling exercises or not like, it doesn't feel right. I'm not getting to it, right? So we got to find what's right for you and your body. It's not, you know, there's, again, no fix-all situation for everyone here. But thank you for, you know, taking the time to share that, because I think a lot of folks probably feel similar ways of like frustration, like I just can't get there. But all I want to say to you, Lori, and everyone else, is just give yourself that time and patience, compassion, that it will take some time. You will get there. I know you will, with some consistent effort and movement. It's going to happen. It's just going to take time, maybe more, maybe less, but give it a chance, right? Sherry said, I'm right with you, Lori. I feel it. I feel it. Go ahead, Dilini.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one note to that, which is, I know at the beginning I said, listen, there are things that can give you relief. And I want to be very clear that there's nothing wrong with that kind of stuff. In fact, I often, when I'm working with women, give them strategies to give them relief, but it's things that they can do themselves. So learning ways to release the muscles that are tense. So if, for example, you find that you're trying to do a squat and your back keeps rounding, again, it could be your pelvic floor, it could be your low back, but what can you do to release that tension? It could be using like a massage therapy ball, finding that place, working with someone to understand what that muscle is so you can release it, and then you can strengthen in a way that supports your entire system. So it is those small steps, but it's using a whole bunch of different resources to get you to where you want to go.
Dilini, we do still have a couple more questions from the chat. So if we have, do you have a couple more that got sent earlier that you want to address?
You know what, if you could refresh my memory on or if you can read these questions, and I can pull up the questions that were asked. I just want to miss it.
No worries, no worries. So I believe, let me go back. We have talked quite a bit to prepare for this. Let me see. So let me get to the other ones later. I do know I have a couple in the chat now. So let me get to that first. Nalini Mommy said, if I get up as soon as I wake up in the morning, my back feels stiff and I walk very gently, you know, slowly sitting. What stretch sequence will be good to do after, what stretch will be good to get started with exercise soon after I wake up in the morning? Do you have any feedback for her on that, Dilini? Afternoon naps do not result in the same stiffness, she does add. So stiffness in the morning, exercises after she wakes up.
So common, right? Because we've been in bed for an extended period of time. Presumably your nighttime sleep is longer than your nap, Nalini. So I would suggest that when you get out of bed, instead of using your whole body initially, just start by exploring what your sensations are right away. So while you're lying down, wiggle your feet, almost doing a body scan right away. So moving your feet up and down, then moving your knees, bringing your knees up to your chest, basically progressively adding in one movement at a time. And then you can do the same with your hands. So moving your hands, then bending your elbows, hugging yourself, and then wiggling your core. So even while you're lying down, twisting a little bit. The key that I would suggest, though, is making sure that you're engaging your core, because you don't want to just be twisting if you have any weakness here. Engage your core and twist, and then progressively add one movement at a time, then sit up and continue on to walk. Walking is a great exercise. Did you want to add? I've got other suggestions, but Faiz, do you want to add too?
To
lower back. Well, Vaish and I are big fans of rolling out. I don't know if people are familiar. Where's ours?
Yeah, right.
Oh, ours is right here. I mean, there are lots of different ways to do it, but this rolling thing, they're popular now. You see them in a lot of gyms. These are great in particular for the lower back. You put it on the ground and you kind of just roll back and forth with it. And so that's a good way that you don't really have to necessarily stretch. It might just be those muscles. I think Dilini touched on it. Sometimes those back muscles, for a variety of reasons, they're just cinched, they're holding on. Maybe it's because you slept, maybe it's because they're imbalanced, but so, you know, massaging yourself, essentially that's what this is, massaging yourself with something it helps those kind of muscles to ease up and relax. If you've ever had a professional massage, how do you feel afterwards? You feel, right? And so there are ways to do that at home. This one's low back in particular, but there's a whole variety of ways, things that you can use for that or other areas.
Thank you. Yeah. Nalani Mommy, if you have anything else to add to that as you're here, please unmute and feel free. You are unmuted, so go ahead. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, I understand that piece. It's just that when I get up, I just have to go to the bathroom. So, I'm stiff. I don't have the luxury of waiting in bed to, get myself kind of warmed up. So that's why I really asked that question. And then afterwards, I do have a couple of, and I'm on the East Coast, I'm in the West Coast. So I wake up early to join any East Coast workouts. So at that point, I'm kind of stiff. If I don't give myself enough time to wake up little earlier and kind of walk about.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. And I think you're describing something that so many people experience, right? Because we wake up and our first thought is, what do I need to do today? Or the first thought is, what's on my phone? Neither of which is necessarily the most helpful way to start our day or the most peaceful way to start our day. So I heard you say, Auntie, that that sometimes you give yourself extra time to get to what you need to do. And I hope that those are days that you can put something like this into place. There is difficulty, I know, when people are experiencing or like have to go to the bathroom. And I don't know your particular situation, but speaking more generally here, if incontinence is something that you're dealing with, or that urge to go to the bathroom, and so you don't have time to do all of this stuff, it might be worthwhile looking at your pelvic floor and that connection to the stiffness in your body, because our pelvic floor is so intimately connected to how all the internal systems work. And so if that's an issue for you or for anybody else, that's worth exploring. Absolutely.
Okay, Dilini, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Nalani.
No, I was just saying thank you. Yes. Need to look at the pelvic floor. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. We're going to keep moving because we do have questions rolling in. And I do have other questions that came up beforehand, so I want to get to that too. So let me make sure I'm kind of coming in order here. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to jump in because I saw a comment from Jen just talking about using supports to sleep. And absolutely, that's a great one, because as it relates to alignment, you want to make sure that we're supporting all of that. And so to use a pillow between your knees, if you're a side sleeper, to use a pillow under your knees if you're a back sleeper, and to position it differently. We can talk about it more specifically if you're a tummy sleeper. All of that can help maintain that alignment, because part of this is that muscle stiffness. Part of it is your muscles are pulling in a way that isn't necessarily comfortable for your body. Thanks, Jen.
Perfect. Okay. So I will go to the next question here, which is, Michelle, are there things that help with anterior pelvic tilt aside from doing that visual adjustment in the mirror Dilini demonstrated? Are there any other things that we can do?
Yeah, absolutely. So remember how I was talking about doing those releases? Okay, so there is, for anybody who has any sort of imbalance in their core, to do crunches and to do things that load the core system in an imbalanced way is not helpful, because then you're just increasing that imbalance. And that's part of what's leading to that pelvic tilt that you're talking about. Sorry, did you say Michelle? Is that the name? Yes. That's part of what's leading to that anterior pelvic tilt that you're talking about. There is a strategy called hypopressives, which is basically exercise that works on decreasing the pressure inside our system. It is a controlled breath exercise, and that can relieve some of the pressure. If you're talking about just movements that you can do, if your pelvis is tilted this way, I know, Vaish, one of the exercises you wanted to do, or one of the stretches you wanted to show, was a hip flexor release. That would be helpful. So if you were to go into a lunge position, keeping your spine long and just tilting your pelvis forward, so tucking your tailbone under, you can see how this would stretch this area here and can release some of the tension there. Working to release the tension in this area is what's going to help, Michelle. Some of it can be targeted, as I said before, with like a massage therapy ball. Some of it can be an overall exercise routine that you can do. If, as you are doing these exercises, you think about your core positioning or your pelvic positioning, that will translate to how you stand as well. I hope that answered your question. If you have something more specific that you're looking for, let me know. I think I see question, Pat. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so just to add on the strength side, because again, this is our expertise, and it's something that we also will add to Dilini, because everything Dilini said was really solid, is really solid, but we want to also strengthen the glutes, because the glutes tend to be inactive from sitting culture. We sit a lot, and that can be to turn them on. It'll be good to strengthen them. And then the other,
what the glutes do is they extend the hips. So if I'm struggling with this, if I have stronger glutes, look what happens. What happens with my hips? They lengthen and extend the hips. So anything that's going to strengthen these in the extended position is going to help send that pelvis into alignment, as well as strengthening the abs, right? Because that, what does that do? That brings this there, and it brings, my glutes bring this here. And so that can help with that alignment.
yes,
We sit a lot. So weak glutes, what am I doing right now? My glutes, I go, and now my glutes are off. Not working at all, right? And so a lot of us sit here in this inactive position all day. And so we want to strengthen them so they have help with the alignment.
Thank you, Pat. Yeah, those are some really good visuals as well. Let's keep moving, because I know folks have to have their Saturday rest period too. I do want to make sure we get to all the questions, and I hope I didn't forget anyone. So Darshika said, what are your thoughts on acupuncture? There's also another question about what are your thoughts on chiro, but let's start with the acupuncture one first. She said, I find it helps with any sciatica or nerve pain. So what are your thoughts there, Dilini?
As far as I know, from a research perspective, because I don't practice acupuncture or chiro myself, I understand that there are short-term benefits to that many people report. And if it's working for you, I think that is brilliant. And please use that as one of the tools in your toolbox. I do think, however, that it might be a short-term type of relief. And so if there aren't other changes being made, if you're not actively strengthening, if you're not looking at your alignment and your posture outside of that time with your practitioner, it's not necessarily the most helpful thing, particularly if you're not considering all the points of your pain cycle that are being affected. So there's nothing wrong with that. I think that it's just one part of what can be done to help.
Thank you. And the other one about chiro, well, let me get to that one. I'm trying to find it here. Hamida said, what's your take on chiros? And what is a good stretch to help with spinal pain due to epidural? Thank you. This has been awesome. Thank you, Hamida, for that comment. Dilini, what are your thoughts there?
Sorry, I was distracted by some of the things. So you said, what's a suggestion for for spinal something?
Sorry, so what's your take on chiropractors? Let's do that first.
Similar sort of answer, in the sense that any practitioner that is focusing on just one area of your body is fine, so long as they're part of a healthcare team. I really hope you see yourself as more than just one part of your body or one movement or one experience. You are so much more than that. So if there's one practitioner providing support in one way, that is great. And I certainly have nothing against somebody who's providing you that sort of assistance, but just make sure it's balanced with everything else. It cannot be just the one thing.
Perfect. And then the other question she had was, where are we? What is a good stretch to help with spinal pain due to the epidural that happened prior in her body? What would be a good stretch for spinal pain?
A good stretch for spinal pain. Where is she experiencing, or he, epidural? Where is she experiencing the pain?
Yes. So Hamida, if you're here, or I don't know, let me check the chat if you've explained, but if you're open to opening up.
Oh, I see the comment. I think she said lower back, but yeah, Hamida, if you're here and you want to come to the mic, that'd be great.
She may be.
Hey, yeah, I'm here. So it's like the lower back, I guess right where the epidural was inserted is where like it usually feels very like you can feel the pain, and like I heard, theories about before, like, oh, during cold weather and things like that, you feel more of the pain. I didn't think it would be true after getting the epidural, but I think there's some truth to that. So I'm noticing like, it's just exactly where the epidural was inserted. Certain days, like it's just like I can really feel it. So other than the cat and cow, because that is good, I find that helps. I don't know if there's anything else you'd suggest for that specific pain.
Okay. Yeah, two thoughts come to mind. So the first is to your comment about cold weather, and the reason why we feel more pain on days when the weather is colder is because of barometric changes. Pressure on our body can cause us to experience pain differently. It causes us to put pressure on our muscles, which compresses maybe the nerves that are running through, and that might be part of what you're experiencing, Hamida, that irritation that's happening at that area, the pressure that's being put on that area. I'm not sure about your specifics, so I'm speaking quite generally, but that might be the reason why you feel that way. So if you can use a hot pack, if that makes sense for you, then that might be helpful, kind of keeping that area warm might be helpful. Secondly, anything to kind of open up that area might be helpful. So if it's, for example, so maybe in addition to the cat-cow, because that is helpful, is if you open your legs wide and do a forward fold on the chair. So I'm going to step back. I don't think you'll be able to see me fully, but imagine I'm sitting on a chair. If I sat down, you wouldn't be able to see me fully, but imagine I'm sitting down and then opening my legs wide and leaning forward, bending your knees to allow this area of your back to really open up, can relieve some of that tension. And then kind of wiggle around in that position. So just because you're moving forward doesn't necessarily mean you're going to relieve the pressure or that compression that's there. When you're there, see if you can angle yourself from one side to the other side. So keep in mind, though, that I'm saying keep your hips flexed. You're not necessarily rounding your low back yet. First you flex, then you round, and go from side to side. Does that?
Yeah, it makes sense. I can't wait to try it. Thank you so much.
No problem. Try it and let me know. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that. And if not, we can figure out something else that works for you.
Amazing.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Hamida, for sharing that with us. It's so important. I'm sure there's other moms here that have similar concerns or issues around that. Hamida being a new mom, this is really prevalent and she wants to take care of it, which I love. So let's continue just to making sure that we get the questions that I received before the workshop that I want to make sure we get to is, so the background for this person is that she's had 2 knee surgeries, ACL and meniscus repairs, and has regular knee stiffness, knee joints cracking and pain. Both surgeries were about 10 years ago, and I'm heavier than I was then. The question is, how do I know when the stiffness, cracking, and pain is normal? When should I be modifying my exercises? And when do I need to consult with a medical professional? I can repeat those questions one at a time for you, Dilini. So the first one was, how do I know when the stiffness, cracking, and pain is normal?
So I generally, I can speak to this quite generally because I don't know the specifics of this person's situation, but generally speaking, as I said before, the pops and crackles and snaps that we hear on our body, unless they're associated with any of those flags that I mentioned, so the immediate nerve irritation, if there's a really sharp pain that comes with weight bearing or moving a joint, unless it's associated with that, or the swelling that we talked about before, or a lump or a mass or some change to your body, more than likely, it's just your body moving. These are snaps and cracks as your muscles start to lengthen. What the pattern that people go through once you've had an injury is our muscles contract in that area, in that pattern. So remember what Pat was just showing before, when you sit down, one side of your body contracts and the other side lengthens. It's the same sort of pattern that happens if you've injured a part of your body. We change how we hold ourselves, we change how we walk, we change how we move. And so we create these patterns, and as we move, we break out of them. And those snaps and pops and cracks all kind of come as part of that process, not necessarily something to worry about unless it's accompanied by any of those flags that I mentioned. Definitely talk to somebody any of those are there.
Okay, so just to clarify, did you get to that second and third question too, or do you want me to repeat those two?
No, sorry, I thought you were going question by question. Go ahead. You can repeat the question.
Second one is, when, from that same person, when should I be modifying my exercises?
The short answer is all the time, because hopefully we're checking in on what our body is doing all the time, and we're working into that edge. So when I talk about intentional movement, I hope people are leaning into their edge. And by that, I mean, work to a point where there's a mild level of discomfort, but not one where you're crashing and burning, not one where you're beyond that point where you feel, okay, this is something I can manage to do right now. And it's by kind of pushing ourselves to that we can build resilience. If you go too far, then you hit a wall, and then it takes time to recover from that. If you don't give yourself enough of that push, then you don't have enough of an opportunity to really train your brain that things are safe, and to allow yourself the opportunity to realize that you can do that. But when you are checking in with yourself, remember I gave you those checking questions before? Also use the acronym of FIT. Many people have heard of that. So it's frequency, intensity, time, and duration. And depending on your answers to the previous question, so how are you feeling? What's your energy level like? Every time you do an exercise or activity, and this is just sort of what our body does anyway, but just to be more conscious of it if you're trying to manage your pain symptoms, align that FIT principle of exercise with how you're feeling and your level of energy for that day. And if you can maintain your alignment as you're doing an exercise, it's great. If you can't do that, or if it's a struggle for you, then that might be a cue for you to change either how long you're doing it for, how often you're doing it, or the type of exercise you're doing at that time.
Cool. Thank you, Dilini. Such a good answer. Such a good answer. And the last question from her is, when do I need to consult with a medical professional?
I think I answered this one already. So it's when any of those flags come up, absolutely talk to somebody if you're worried. And you know what, if you are worried and it just feels like something is off, trust your gut and talk to somebody about it. Hopefully it's somebody that you trust. Again, as I said before, somebody who will speak to you about more than just one part of your body, but to look at the entirety of what's going on.
I think what you're trying to say is like the holistic side, which it is important to incorporate not only like pain, but like stress, the lifestyle aspects that encompass our life. We have to pay attention to all of it to help the actual root of the situation. Let's keep moving. And I know Sherry did say that's a difficult place for me to find. So Sherry, if you want to expand on that, feel free to unmute. If not, totally fine, or chat it up. I'll give you just a few seconds if you'd like.
I just, it's something that I have, it's hard for me to find that middle ground. It's either I do too little or I'm over the edge and doing too much.
Absolutely.
Finding that middle ground is very difficult for me to do.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's part of the journey. I mean, I can only speak for myself, but like I've been training for years, and it took me years to find that sweet spot. And that sweet spot changes day per day, right? A good day, a bad day. So not only do you have to find that happy medium, but that happy medium is going to change. I'm still constantly going to work out and I go, man, I feel like normally I could have done more. Or some days I'm like, oh, wow, I feel really good. I feel really strong, whatever. So it's your body's an experiment, right? The best experiments are ones that, when they study heart disease in people, it's for decades, right? And that's how it is for us. It's just, it takes time.
I sucked at science though.
You're a science experiment though. We all are. We're all scientists. And we're all just experimenting what works, what doesn't work. My body responds to this. This feels good. This doesn't feel good. I like this. You're a science experiment. We all are.
That's an awesome way to think about it. Yeah. Thank you.
You're a scientist.
100%. We are absolutely scientists. And you're right, Sherry, that with pain, particularly pain that's been around for a while, there is that up and down. It's always a moving target. It feels like, oh, I think I can do this. And then, oh, I overshot it or I undershot it. I think I can do a little bit more. And then you overshoot it. And it's that it's that crazy pathway, and it feels frustrating because it doesn't feel like there's a way to settle that out. I would encourage you to look at energy conservation strategies, because that goes hand in hand with pain management. So looking at the concept of spoons to grade your exercise or to grade your activities, looking at the idea of pacing and prioritizing and kind of structuring that a little bit, stepping back and looking what that pain response and behavior looks like for you might provide that objective lens to kind of be that science experiment that you are, right? You're just creating that framework for yourself and then experimenting within it.
Thank you, Sherry. Balu Chitapa, you are unmuted. Did you have something to share or add before we go to the next question?
No, it's fine. Everything is great.
Great.
Nothing, yeah. It's
Okay.
fine. You can go ahead.
Okay, so the next question is, I'm wondering which type of pain, I didn't write down who wrote this, so if you feel like speaking up, please do. But the question happened in earlier in the chat. The person said, I'm wondering which type of pain is caused by poor posture and poor habits, aka sitting at the computer incorrectly, texting with your head down, and if there can be multiple types of pain simultaneously. So two kind of questions there. I'm wondering which type of pain is caused by poor posture and poor habits. Dilini, do you have an answer for that?
I'm going to answer the second one first, which is it possible to have multiple types of pain? Because it kind of influences the second answer. And the answer to that second question is absolutely. You can have many different kinds of pain at the same time. So to tease it out really involves looking at what your history and what your experience has been for you specifically to this person. In terms of posture and positioning, it could be that it is more of a nociceptive pain, in that if you've strained something because you're holding yourself in a certain way, or you keep doing something repeatedly where you're injuring a part of your body, or it could be more of that irritation, that nerve irritation pain. If you're, for example, sitting and holding yourself in a certain way and pinching a nerve, it can cause that type of pain. Or it can be functional, where you're not actually irritating a nerve, you're not actually injuring a part of your body, but as a result of all this combination of factors in your life, because we said there can be different types of pain at any time, it can be it can kind of sensitize the system, and then we feel that pain in that way. Does that, I hope that whoever asked the question,
Jen,
I hope that answers the question.
That was Jen. Jen, if you feel like speaking up, feel free. If not, no worries. We'll keep moving.
Yeah, that helps. That was good. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. You look so cute. It's cool seeing folks in non-workout gear, because usually when we work out, we're pretty like no makeup, maybe no bra. And it doesn't matter. We're just having fun and enjoying ourselves, camera on, camera off. But we all are putting our best suit on today. Darshika said I was going to say the same thing.
I never have makeup or a bra on when I work
okay.
out. So I'm part of that club too.
I don't. LOL at Pat. Okay, let's keep it moving. I do think we have one or two more questions. And I love that Lori said that swimming is such a great alternative to so much pain. It's very
low impact.
Low impact. Totally. And then go ahead.
Sorry, I was just saying, and full body too, because you really have to focus on everything that's going on. It's a beautiful exercise for sure.
Yeah, totally. And I believe Arissa said, same for swimming, such a wonderful way to work parts of the body at once. Exactly the same. I think let's keep one more question in here. And if anything, we'll keep it going. If you need to leave, that's totally fine. We will have this recorded and link sent out for folks in case they want to go back to it. We should have mentioned that earlier. I believe Lori, I think it was your question. I'm trying to get back to where it's at. Where is it?
While you're looking for that, Vaish, I remember there was one other question you shared with me about nose breathing, I think. You were asking me something about nose breathing. So somebody had asked about nose breathing versus mouth breathing. And I mean, they're both effective ways to get air into your body. So yay, serves a purpose. Having said that, the way that our stress response works is by, let me reframe this. We have a stress response in our body. And there are certain things that we do that kind of keep that pathway going. So if you think of yourself running, so imagine you're running away from like a tiger in a forest and you're running at breakneck speed. And if you stop, that tiger is going to get you. That level of exertion is often accompanied by us tilting our head back and breathing, panting through our mouth. So often, if that's the combination of movement that you find yourself in during the day, if you're tilting your head back and kind of panting, and not necessarily even panting in your day-to-day, but if you're breathing with your chest instead of with your diaphragm, it sends a message to our stress response to keep that going. And so mouth breathing in that context can be something that keeps the nervous system irritated or sensitized, instead of nose breathing, which tends to calm things down. So that's how I would kind of differentiate the two. If you can work toward breathing through your nose, then that would be ideal. Not to say breathing through your mouth is bad, but just that if we can default to breathing through our nose, it is more calming for our nervous system.
Thank you so much. So critical to understand that. If you don't realize, if you breathe through your mouth often, it's good to first get to a place of awareness. Am I breathing, with my nose in my mouth, or is it just my mouth? Because we can inhale with our nose and then exhale with our mouth. And that also, again, it's good that you're breathing 100%, but breathing through the nose is what we were functionally made to do. We are supposed to be breathing in and out through our nose, but it's not always the case due to stress, due to nasal issues. It shifts around for each person. I don't know who wrote this, so please speak up if you can. She or he or they say, I'm an artist. I spend a lot of time with my nose on paper. What types of exercises could I do? I believe, let me get this. Yeah, that's it. What kind of exercises could I do to help?
Oh, I see. I think Lori said that this is her. So Lori, would you like to come to the mic to kind of expand on that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm an artist. So for a good part of the day, I'm leaning down. I mean, basically my nose, my back is bended, and I'm about as close to the piece of paper as I could possibly get to do like these fine little detail-oriented drawings. So what's worked with me, because I end up getting a lot of pain, is to put a what do you call it, heating pad on my back at night. But if my question was, what kinds of exercises could I do to relieve that lower back pain, please?
Okay. Do you want me to start, or do you want to?
Go ahead, Dilini.
Start. Okay. So, So my first few thoughts are to just do one exercise isn't necessarily going to help you, because this is something you're doing all day, all the time, right? And so because it's something that's such a big part of your life, one particular thing isn't necessarily going to do it. But if you can find ways to take breaks and incorporate something that can stretch your or open up this front line, that might be helpful for you. And I'm sure Vaish and Pat are going to share something now that can add to this piece. But specifically what I would be looking at, because my guess is if you are nose to paper, as you say, like this, this is the position I'm
sitting in a chair, yes.
Yes. So what I'm seeing in this picture is I would like to open up your rib cage, open up across your shoulders here, and then untuck. So these are the 3 points of your alignment that I would work on. I suspect that even if you could just take a step away from that position and do 1 or 2 exercises, but more frequently through the day, even if it's just a few minutes more frequently through the day, that would be helpful for you. I do have some exercises, but I'm sure Pat and Vaish are going to want to share something too. So I'm going to let them kind of take over at this point to share their expertise.
Yeah, there are all kinds that you could do, because a lot of the things that we're talking about that are affected are a lot of the neck, the upper mid back. There's probably some rounding at the lower back as well, but also tightness in these areas. Excuse me. There's a common exercise that we do during Fitness in Place. We call them I's, Y's, and T's, because essentially what we're doing is we're creating a Y motion, maybe an I motion, or maybe a T motion. But we'd be doing that against gravity. So I'm upright right now, right? So you can either do it from what we call a hip hinge position. So I might go down into a hinged position, and then I'm gonna think about doing my neck. This is gonna help my neck. I'm gonna think about retracting it, tucking the chin. That's gonna engage those neck muscles, okay? But then I also wanna take my hands and try going into a Y formation. Because what's that gonna do? It's taking my shoulder blades and it's retracting them, right? Because you're doing a lot of this, maybe not exactly in this position, but this is how the shoulders look. And so what we wanna do is retract everything. So you can do a Y, you can do an I, you could do a T. We even have these things called W's where it looks like this from this position. Now, the cool thing about this is you could totally do it from a seated position too. I can come down to my chair. I can kind of lean forward and rest my chest on my knees, or maybe a pillow if you need some elevation. Get a pillow, get something else if you need something else. And same thing. I'm retracting the neck, and I'm thinking about retracting, pulling back the back muscles in my back. So there's my Y, there's my W, there's my T. And what I'm really thinking about is I'm thinking about the external rotation, okay? Because you're getting a lot of the internal rotation inward. And so we want to rotate. I'm thinking thumbs, open that chest. Dilini was saying open. It's going to help the muscles open the chest. And so I'm really thinking about taking my thumbs and rotating the arms back. Internal rotation, external rotation. So we want to externally reverse, backwards, rotate. Okay? And that's going to do a lot with the back, the shoulders, but also that neck, that intentional neck retraction. That's going to help as well. So there's a lot to do in that kind of sequence.
Thank you for showing those movements to me. I appreciate that very much.
Yeah,
No
yeah,
problem.
of course.
I was mimicking you because it helps me remember.
That's perfect. Yeah, you should be doing that. So I'm glad you did that. Yeah.
I just wanted to add one more actually, because sometimes when we are when we're starting, and again, Vaish and Pat are great at kind of grading along the way. If, however, you are starting and people aren't around, it might be easy to start lying down when you have all that feedback for your body. So lying on your back and still doing the cactus arms, or turning from side to side and rolling one arm open as you keep the other arm flat. I realize I'm demonstrating standing up, which is nowhere near what it should look like, but I have no way of angling my screen right now. So if you're lying down, you can still practice kind of retracting your shoulder blades and still get the feedback so you can maintain alignment. Because it's not always helpful to open this if then the rest of your core is just sinking back to a position that's compromising your back.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think we have one last question, and again, we probably will be here till about 1 if you want to stay with us. If not, I totally recommend enjoying your day, enjoying the weather if you can. The question I believe is, and I lost it. Mrs. G says, is there a stretch for back pain that goes to hip and groin? Or was that tuck, flare, and roll the pelvic floor and the foot on the knee, pressing the knee down with a straight back? Or so main question is there a good stretch for back pain that goes to the hip and groin? We could do that. Dilini, do you want us to take this one or do you got it?
No, absolutely. Start. I can add on if there's anything else that I want to share.
You got it. Okay. Pat's gonna demonstrate. So
we actually do this one a lot during our core. We do core and cardio together. And so I've noticed that during core and cardio, like we do, I feel a lot of tightness in my hips because we're doing maybe some leg raises or some high knees. And so this one's great for the hips, but we also add some rotation to it because again, what is the core? It's not just this, it's all of this. So that includes lower back. So this is a cool one that incorporates everything. You can try it with me if you want. It starts down on the floor. And what I'm trying to do is I'm going to bend these legs, and I'm going to show you what you're trying to get to. You might not get to this position right away, but what we're trying to get to is bending the legs. And I'm going to roll forward and flop my legs over at the same time. So I'm coming forward, I'm rolling forward, and I'm flopping my legs, maybe bring that down a little bit, to get my legs as close to this position as possible, right? We're looking for about 90 degrees. Foot, knee, okay? And then a sit back. As far as you can. I already feel some good stretch, so you might not be able to go as far, but as soon as I do that, I immediately feel stretch in this top leg as I do this. A lot in the inner thigh and the hip. And then we hold that, we feel the stretch, and then we add a walk around as far as you can, as much as you can, where you walk the hands around and you get some good rotation at the back. I try up high, I feel a little bit more in the abs. I try to work my way down to feel it more in the lower back. And again, then we flip to the other side. We bend the legs, roll forward, bend the legs, and sit back on the butt as well as possible. Now, maybe you can't get in this position, so your legs are a little bit straighter. Okay? Yeah. Looking to get as bent as possible. And I'm also thinking about squeezing my butt muscle, right? Because if this hip muscle crosses the hip right here, what do my glutes do? Remember what I said my glutes do when we were talking about straightening the glutes? They do what? They extend the hips. They extend, and so that places a stretch on that hip. And then I'm doing the same thing. I hold this, feel this stretch in this top leg, and then I rotate around as far as I can. I try up high, I get down low. I love this. I do this multiple times a week. Dilini,
do you have anything to add?
I love that stretch, by the way. It is amazing. The one that I wanted to share is, it's not necessarily a stretch per se, but just something to cue yourself on. In fact, I encourage everybody to do this now, because I do this regularly during my day. And it might sound a little funny, but I release my butt. And I call this like my butterfly butt breath. I referred to it before if anybody joined us on our IG live video. But it's a butterfly butt breath. And I mean, you won't be able to see it. I'll step back so you can see my butt. But you won't be able to see it. I will feel it though, because most people hold tension in their pelvic floor and in their butts. Like that's just where we hold tension. And when we do that, we end up tucking our butts under. So notice if your butt is doing that, and actually see if you can release that. It might help to actually put your hands on your butt and kind of pull to the sides. But see if you can feel any tension release between your legs. If you can do that, then you're actually addressing the strain that you feel, not just in your low back, but also along your pelvic floor, which is connected deeply to your hips and your groin and all of that. So you're releasing all of that tension.
Amazing. Love it. All the different angles. It's so important to get perspective from all the different angles from different wellness professionals, because we all have so much value to add to each other's solutions. I think we are wrapping up. I don't see much more questions. I'm gonna leave it for folks if they want to unmute and just share a comment or share their experience of the workshop. We would love to hear it. I personally don't have anything going on after this. So Dilini, if you need to go, totally fine and fair. But if you'd like to share, we're here to, again, create that community, create that active listening, safe area to express yourself. So I'll leave it open for anyone that does unmute. Unless Dilini, you have anything else to share as well. I want to make sure we honor you.
Yeah, no, I am so happy to see everybody here, and it's been such a wonderful conversation so far. So if anybody else has questions, I'm happy to keep it going for a little bit longer. Absolutely. Oh, actually, one more quick note. I will be offering, it's a pain and stress and yoga series coming up. So if anybody's interested, it's more of the information that we talked about today, and there will be information on my website. So I'll send you the link with sort of a follow-up package to this workshop, and would love to hear more from you. So just a quick thought that popped in my mind. I see Sherry waving. Is this a bye or is that a question? I'm not sure. Okay.
Bye, Sherry.
Thank you.
Aish, I just wanted to say something. Is that okay? This is Darshika. The three of you melded together so well. All the preparation, all your work, it really shows. And it really complements each other. So thank you so much for this experience. It was so great being here and learned so much. So good job, team.
Thank you, Darsh.
Thank you. That is so sweet.
We're lucky to have amazing community members like yourself that want to like uplift the entire community versus it is important to focus on yourself. I'm not saying that is a selfish act, but there is something beautiful about bringing all of us up together versus the thing that I just said. So thank you, Darsh, so much for saying that. Amelia and Kaylee had also expressed, and Hamida, thank you for a wonderful workshop. We definitely learned a lot. I love hearing that. I know it can be a little bit intense to get on the mic and talk. So I appreciate you explaining that.
I think Danoja maybe wants to say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Dilini, Vaish, and Pat for this amazing workshop. Like, I learned a lot. A lot of people in my family experience pain in lower back and also osteoarthritis in their knees as well. So it came really beneficial for me because in the future, if something does happen to my knees or body parts, I have something to look back at. But thank you so much for this workshop. I learned a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, loving that. Again, just reading on my brain's on that way to ending. Need to take a break here soon. But Nalini said, thank you for the information conversation. Each such conversation reinforces previous learning and leads to more consistent practice for me. And that is so true, so true. You will not get it in one day. It takes time. Be compassionate with yourself. Give yourself that time. Believe self-efficacy, which is all that means is believing in yourself and your abilities, is so critical for growth and for change. So take that deep breath. Tomorrow is a new day. If it didn't make sense today, tomorrow's a new day, and give yourself that opportunity each day. Because like Pat said, every day is different. It is different, especially in the pandemic. We know that more than anything.
Yeah, and just to add on that, absolutely, because we can hear the same message a million times, and then one day it just hits us at the right time when we're ready to actually take that on and put it into practice. And so we are moving. We're constantly evolving creatures, and so it helps to kind of keep in touch with that, to show ourselves grace and to accept that every day, every moment is a new opportunity to create that change, to continue that journey.
Yeah, amazing. And I think we'll end it on this. Lori said, this has been very encouraging to keep at it, listen to my body, and take the small steps I need to continue doing exercise that will help my overall well-being. I appreciate getting the opportunity to learn everything with you all presented. Thank you. And she says, thank you. Thank you so much, Lori, for the input.
Small steps.
And for all the comments that you made throughout the presentation. Super helpful to be adding that and adding value for everyone else too, because we can't cover everything in a short 2 hours. Yeah, I think.
Yes.
Yeah,
no, I agree with everything you said. So that's all I'm saying. Double thumbs up.
Amazing. For the folks that are still left, we also want to say that like we're more than I emailed a few folks already about this, but I'll email again that we are giving everyone here a week free pass at Fitness in Place, just to see if it's a good fit for you, because it's not always the right thing for your body and for your emotional capacity. So we want to just say that we will be sending out a little bit of like a voucher or like an email that states that you do have this week free pass till the end of March. And if you already know you want to join us, I'll also include a link on Patreon, which is the platform we use. We do have 3 tiers of memberships that allow us to, again, help folks with limited income. And we also have scholarships too. So that scholarship round will be opening up again. So we will never say no to you. There's always an opportunity to grow with us. And yeah, that is my little, what is it called?
Shameless self-promotion.
Shameless, yeah. We're here, and as much as we want to help you, we also want you to keep it consistent and keep it growing. And I'm glad Dilini also shared her opportunities to work further with her, because there's just so much value, and I wish we could just like transplant it into your brain, but it unfortunately
we want to help people. We don't, people cycle in, they learn, they grow independent, and they leave. And then new people come in, they grow, they learn, they become independent, they leave, right? We don't want to keep you forever unless you want to hang out with us and work out with us forever. So.
Thank you all. Thank you. It's been a solid 2 hours. Thanks so much for being here. We really are grateful for each of you. And I know we have folks from California, from Virginia, from Ohio, from Canada, Ontario, Toronto. So it's so good to have such a big group of folks come together. And unfortunately, I didn't get to say that earlier, but for us here, like it's so good to be a part of something that feels really authentic, especially in times like this. So Dilini, any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
No, I think you covered everything beautifully. I would just be repeating everything again.
Amazing. Okay, y'all, have a great day and evening, whatever time zone you're in. Enjoy yourself, enjoy your body, take that time. No wrong, no right. Thank you so much for coming through. We look forward to seeing you again, hopefully soon.